Okay, once more into the breach again. It's Thursday, the 10th of December 2020, and it's 13:04 here in Carricknagarvey in Gweedore in West Donegal. What I was saying, I've been going through and trying to think of how to digitize a whole collection of memorabilia as such, or whatever, that I have, that I'd set aside, that belongs to you, Tig, and there's this really a descriptor, a collection of fragments of your life that we've had together over the years, including many birthday cards and all that sort of stuff. But there were also some items, written items, that were there, and I had the chance yesterday maybe to go through these when I was trying to come up with a way of digitizing them. So I found it I was trying to use a GoPro camera that you could read stuff in detail. It doesn't lend itself very well to focus, so what separately I'm going to do is just digitize all the pages, etc. And again, these are legacy of our lives, fragments of our collected, our recollections of what happens. And I suppose when I read this stuff or see it, it's really about your life. It's obviously this impinges on me, but so many specifics and details, one that I don't remember, and certainly perspectives that you've had that I wouldn't, they're your perspectives. But this is a particular thing I thought was very interesting to look at, because it contains information you've written, and I think from my writing, I think I've written, and I'm not sure if there's another section there, and I'm not sure if it's your writing. I'm not really sure. It's just again to repeat that, in truth, it seems to me that I probably can read my own writing, but in general, I seem to think that your writing is probably somewhat better than mine. This is wonderful to look back, and I'm not sure many people write in this day and age. If I just show you that sort of stuff. So I think there's no data in the front of it, but it's all contained in sort of a foolscap folio like that. So I presume it's all related to the same date. The date here is 3rd of December 2005. So earlier on, I had just, in a previous video I had read something which you'd written on the 31st of October 2005, because you were just coming up to your 18th birthday, which would be on the 25th of November. So this was, rejecting the offer of going to a double-header football match in the Premiership, which I had foolishly thought, wow, he loved this, it showed me at the time how out of kilter I was with your world. But this event obviously happened in the fortnight, it happened 4 days after this. So obviously it happened. Now, at the time, you and Niall were residing with me on a week-on, week-off basis, where you would be with me and we're having it for 1 week from Monday to the following Monday. Then you'd be with your mother in Blackrock, and you'd probably been in Blackrock for probably the last 3 or 4 years, and it seemed to me you developed a whole other culture and social experience out there that I wasn't part of. I didn't know anything about it. So it's interesting what emerged out of this. So an event took place on a Friday, which I only became aware of on the Saturday after that. So maybe what I'll just do, I'll read the note that you've written out. I think, looking back and trying to reflect back, and you'll probably have a better memory, I think I might have insisted that you write this out. And again, thinking back, the reason I would have done this at the time would be about that concept of reflection. And when you have to write something out, you have to choose the words, you have to choose whether to talk shite or not. But there is a delay, there's a demand, there's a delay in your brain to try and process thoughts, and that's what I had hoped that this would achieve. Anyway, it starts, Friday evening, school had ended, and the Halloween midterm break had just begun. I had got the bus home, and when I got home, I had no plan that I was going to drink that night. So just to say, this is the first time up to that point in time, I would never ever have had the notion that you had drink taken. You know, the world should tell me that I was completely naive about that, but you know, I don't drink. I never did, and that was just my way. It's not that I didn't hang around with people who drank or what I did. You know, I did all those things, and most of the time people thought I was half drunk just the way I behaved. And I always felt I got away with having a good time without having any either cost or dangers associated with drink. But anyway, I had no plan that I was going to drink that night. The first thing that I done when I got home was I got changed and was ready to go out to Ken. So just to explain, Ken is Ken Gaughran. So Ken Gaughran was the son of his father, who was also called Ken. And Ken Gaughran, Ken, the father, was in school with me. We played football together. And Ken had got married and had died. He'd worked in revenue. I used to play indoor football with him. Subsequently, when I came back to college, to Dundalk, was working at college, used to play indoor football with him, along with Paddy Donnelly and some of the other guys at the tax office. You know, Ken was a character, a really decent guy, and Ken died suddenly, and his widowed mother remarried another fellow who I was in school with, who was also Ken's best friend, Paddy, and God, his name just escapes me now, but it'll come back to me in a moment. And Paddy's wife herself, his wife had also died suddenly. So Paddy and Ken, the father's widow, they then subsequently got married, and subsequent to that again, I came back into Paddy Clark. That's who it was. So Paddy had been a great footballer in school. I played football with Paddy again in Dundalk in my 30s, late 20s, I suppose, when I came back to Dundalk, early 30s. But they'd get separated, so Paddy had come to me for some advice and personal support and all the rest through that period. So anyway, it turned out when you met out to Blackrock, Ken's mother lived out there. At that stage, they were apart, and you hung around with him. So I wouldn't have known the young son, except knowing who I met him maybe once or twice. You don't know anything about the chap. But anyway, you could change. You're ready to go out to Ken. Then I decided that if I do my art essay now, I wouldn't have to worry about doing it during the midterm break. I got half of it done when I started just drifting off. So I just got up and called over to Ken. I asked Ken, was he going out? And he said, come on, we'll go up to the Felda. I didn't really want to go. Then we stayed for a while thinking about what we would do tonight. And since there was no one at Ken's house, I decided I would stay in Ken's house. We then both decided that we would drink and stay in Ken's house. I told my mum that we were going down to the Rock to get something to eat so that I could get money to drink. Then I told her that we were going up to the Felda and that we were watching films in Ken's house. We went to the Rock then with €20, and Ken went in while I waited out. I felt nervous, and I was jumpy at the thought that the guards might drive past. When Ken came out, those feelings didn't go away, and wouldn't until we got back to Ken's. Softly, don't know what that means. Whilst walking home, everyone and everything that I had seen felt like something was going to happen. But all that changed once I stepped through Ken's door. A huge feeling of relief came. We started drinking straight away, and with 20 minutes, our first can had been drank. We sat down in Ken's kitchen listening to the Beatles and singing along. The song played most was Penny Lane and then Lady Madonna. At this interesting time, because I would have had no memory or really of knowledge of you knowing Beatles music. Beatles music wouldn't have been in vogue at all in your age group, whereas it would have been in my age group. So at least, anyway, it looks like you were having a good time. The song played. We also talked about school results in between listening and drinking. So this is an interesting concept of reflecting on your school performance while drinking alcohol as a 17-year-old. So just for the world that we live in, whatever world we live in, I think you had to be, I'm not even sure if you still have to be, 18 years of age to legally drink alcohol in the country of Ireland. I said, you know, I'm looking, I went to university at 17, and so all the guys I was staying with were all drinking loads, and it seemed that nobody ever asked them for anything else, ID or anything like that. So anyway, it just shows you how naive I was to imagine that you were living in this world, just because I didn't drink, to think that people could survive without alcohol. Anyway, I had told Ken that I had failed 5 of my 7 subjects. So you were in your, I think you were in your leaving cert year then, Tig. So I failed 5 or 7 subjects, and that I needed to study more, and that I couldn't come straight out after school anymore. That's interesting. It's interesting that you thought that you'd have to study more, etc., in relation to our future falling out. But anyway, at our 3rd or 4th can, we were dancing around his kitchen. I was feeling great at that time. I was enjoying myself and not thinking of any of what I was doing. When we had finished our last can, we had decided that we would go up to the Fairways and see if there was anything on, and see if anything was on. So we walk up there, and when we got there, we walk around the side and hopped over the back wall, and there was a door open. While we were doing this, I didn't feel bad or worried. I felt more like a character from an old black and white movie like Laurel and Hardy. I thought you were going to say a gangster movie. I like Laurel and Hardy. Through the door was the kitchen. And when in the kitchen, we opened the door of the dessert fridge. And I lifted out a strawberry cake, and I lifted out a piece and threw it at Ken. Then he took a piece of chocolate cake, which was still in the fridge, and threw it at me. I then turned and threw another bit at Ken. We then walked through a door into a room where there was tables and chairs, and we walked around there. Then Ken walked out through a door, and I turned around to see 2 men standing behind me. The thought of running came to my head, but I knew I would have made it much worse on myself. One of the 2 men went out and got Ken. I saw Ken lifting a canister, and then he was brought back into the room with me. Ken kept his mouth shut, but I kept talking shite and trying to get myself out of trouble. They asked us our names, and I had told them my name. It's interesting, I'm not sure what name you gave them. I just want to come back to that later. And I presume you gave them your mother's name. And Ken told them his name. I think this is relevant because Ken Cochrane's name is important. I'm not sure, would he have given him, well, of course his name was Ken Cochrane because his father was Cochrane. That's important, I think, in terms of the analysis of what happened in terms of the state afterwards. They told us that the guards were coming. This enhanced the feeling of me being scared, nervous, unsure of what was going to happen to me. When the guards arrived, the manager told the guards what we had done. Once again, our names were asked, and we told them. Then we were taken out to their squad car, and we were taken down to the station in town. So you were in Blackrock and you were taken into the town in Dundalk. When we were in the station, I asked could I go to the toilet, and they took me. Then we were took to a small room where there was 2 seats, and we were asked to empty our pockets. And I took out my phone and key and pulled my pockets inside out. They told us that was fine, and we sat down until my mum came to collect me. While sitting in the room, I didn't know my mum was coming. just to point out, this was a week in which you were with your mother that week. So you would, by the arrangement that was in place of shared custody, you would typically have been coming back to me on the following Monday. So I was completely unaware of all of this. I thought that they were going to come in and question us as to what had happened, and I was very nervous and scared sitting there waiting. When the door opened next, I saw my mum, and I could see from her face that I had really hurt her and had ashamed her. I got up and walked straight out the door. On the drive home, the car trip was silent. When I got home, Ken and I went into my room and went to bed. So as I look at that now, Ken's mother must have been away, whatever, the night or the weekend, so he must have stayed over in your mother's house. Ken and I went into my room, went to bed. Early that morning, it must be next morning, Ken woke me up, and I could see that he had been up all night, thinking to himself about what had happened. He got up and went over to his house to clean up and check out if everything was all right. When I got up, I sat down in the playroom watching telly, thinking that it would be okay. My dad rang me about 10:30 a.m. and I lied through my teeth and told him that I was fine. Now, I don't know, I'm not sure why I would have rung you. Maybe I would have rung you about football or whatever. Sometimes at that time, I would collect you to go to play football. So it mustn't have been that day, because I know, I'll tell you later, but I went down to Newry later on. Okay, so I rang you. So my dad rang me about 10:30 a.m. and I lied through my teeth and told him that I was fine. When my mum came down, she came into me and she started shouting at me. And I could see that she was extremely annoyed and disappointed with me because she had her fist clenched. She told me that she had cried her eyes out all night, all that night, and that she had to take 2 sleeping tablets to finally get to sleep. When she told this to me, I felt terrible. I didn't know what to say. I was hurt because of what I had done. She then left to ring the manager at the Fairways. While she left, the telly was off, and I was thinking to myself, what had I done? Why had I done this? I had a good life. I was playing top quality football. I had good friends, good parents. I wasn't doing the best at school, but I knew that, and I knew that I was going to improve on it. My mum came back in and told me that she wanted my dad to know about what had happened, and said that she couldn't deal with me on her own. I felt scared of what my dad was going to say and was a bit surprised that he didn't go mad at me. He seemed to get along with it and turn it into something that could help my English and my schoolwork, which was a completely different approach than I expected or that I had ever heard of before. Throughout that day, I had felt ashamed at myself and that of all the people I had disagreed, or that of all the people I had disgraced, the main person I was putting a bad name to was myself. I spent the day thinking of why I had done this and what it was doing for me. Earlier, my mum said to me that I wasn't playing with Dundalk anymore and that I could only train 1 night a week with Rock Celtic. When she said this, I was nearly crying because the thing I loved most was taken away from me, and it was only taken away from me because of what I had done. So that's just the end of that note that you'd written. There's some further stuff here that obviously was written subsequent to this. So just a couple of thoughts on that. My memory of this is that I was in Newry on a Saturday afternoon in the shopping centre in Newry when you rang me and said to me, I've something to tell you. So obviously I must have spoken to you earlier that day and you were fine, etc. And it obviously wasn't raised at that stage. So I was saying, well, what do you want to tell me? I had no idea. I mean, I really had no idea. And then when this started to unravel from you, it was a bit surreal for me listening to this, because 2 things were going on for me. Firstly, you know my son, I suppose, maybe wrongfully so, I always saw you as a little kid and you were growing up, and maybe that happens in front of your eyes and you don't see it. On the other hand, look, I've lived and I had lived in, I say I was in university at 17 years of age. I mean, I was 17 in February 1973. I went to college in September, October 83 when I was 17 and a half years of age. I was hanging around with guys who were out drinking night and day and whatever, and I just didn't drink. That was just my thing. But so it's not that it was new to me, and I'd been a lecturer in a college where I'd come across lots of issues, and through my experience with parental quality, I know that drink and its effects and all of that are a major aspect of relationship difficulties, etc. And also, you were living in a world where, look, at Heineken are sponsoring every fucking football match you get, and Guinness were sponsoring Gaelic football and hurling and everybody else. And like, it would have been weird if you'd lived in a world where you weren't growing up drinking, and there's no escape for someone like you or of your age. But it's interesting, your what you had written there, that you were surprised that. I said I felt scared of what Dad was going to say, and was a bit surprised when he didn't go mad, and he seemed to go along and turn it into something that could help me with my English and my schoolwork. And a bit like the other essay that you'd written about Rob and your dad, I mean, the one thing that I felt really was important, that you would take stock of what was going on for you. When you rang me, the first thing I asked you to do was to hand the phone over to your mother, because your mother Joanne and I brought you into this world, and under the Irish Constitution we had an obligation as parents to look after your social, physical, moral and educational welfare. That was our, and that was an obligation. It was a constitutional obligation that we were obligated to do, and I was happy to do so. In mind of that, we were, in a constitutional sense, equally demanded of and supposedly supported in carrying out that role. So immediately when I heard this is something I said that your mother and I had to, have a common page about in relation to what had gone on. So when your mother answered the phone, I said, look, this is all coming as a shock to me. And a shop centre, tell me what's all this about. And then she said to me, well, this is not the first time he's done this. And then I really got a shock, because I said, fuck, what am I? I'm really in the dark. I had no idea what was going on. And in this, you talk about being scared and your stuff. I mean, I have felt scared as a parent lots of my life with you. Scared of how you would be, your safety, scared of me being cut out of your life, as the statutory culture of our country was proactively trying to do all my life. And I was scared of all this not known. And then I was saying, why haven't I been told about this? I mean, I think this is a really important point in your life. How you would react to this and how this would form the rest of your life was important. And I said to him, why didn't you tell me about this? He said, I just decided not to tell you. And at that point, I made a seminal decision and have never discussed you ever with your mother again. I said, I don't ever want to discuss my children with you again. I realised at that stage that there was a schism between us, the schism of disrespect. And so whatever ever happened after that, I have never since then had any discussion with your mother about you or anything else, or Niall. Look, at that stage you were also on the cusp of being 18 years of age. At 18 years of age you would have been old enough to vote in Ireland. At 18 years of age in Ireland I had left my home, I'd gone to university. So, and in law you would have been coming to be, you wouldn't be a minor over 16 years of age. So, now the other aspect of this, and I mentioned that Ken's name was Ken Gaughran. I had wondered, put you on the phone again, and I demanded, did you tell me? I wanted to know what actually had happened with the guards, etc. And my understanding is that the only name, etc., you could have given the guards when you were asked your name and address, etc., would have been your mother's, and that would have been understandable and appropriate in the circumstances of you having been taken to, and I don't know if the word arrested is correct, but certainly put into a police car and brought to the station by the guards, that you were in her custody at the time and you were in her care. However, the problem that you wouldn't have appreciated from a statutory point of view, from the guards' point of view, 2 young men were arrested or taken to the station who were fatherless, according to their perspective. Ken Garkin was the son of a widow, and you were the son of what would be determined a single mother. And that has cultural implications. It would have cultural implications because many of those young people get disproportionately into trouble. And I was very concerned that the guards may not have been aware that, they would have presumed that you had someone who didn't have any guidance from a father. And that was, I wanted to make sure, and neither would you had that protection either. So I asked you to make sure that I got contact with whoever the guards were, and subsequently I went to visit the guards about this. And what I pointed out to the guards is, my name is Liam O'Gogan. I'm the parent and father of Tig O'Gogan. In law, it has been determined that I have joint physical, equally shared custody of this child, and under the Constitution, irrespective and superseding any law, I have an obligation to look after social, physical and moral and educational welfare. And I want you to bear in mind that you have an obligation to me to keep me in the loop. And I said, my job is to help you do your job, which is to help me do my job, which is to help Tig develop as a respectful, good, value-centred young man who will grow up, get a job, live a life and pay our pensions. I said, that's our job, and whether we like each other or not is not important. That's what we need to do together. The next thing I did is I got from you also the name of the manager in the hotel in the Fairways. And I went to visit the manager and speak with him. Again, I felt it was important to me to explain the family background so he would understand. A wonderful man, a wonderful big thinker. In the same way with me, he wasn't remotely interested in punishing you or Ken Garkin or anybody else. He absolutely agreed with me that our role as adults was to help you people go through a difficult period in your life and mature. And so we discussed a process whereby you would do something which would hold you accountable. Like, he took me around the kitchens, he described to me what he'd done, and said he himself had cleaned the floors of that place because, I said, I wouldn't ask my staff did, I did that myself. And I remember I brought you up to the hotel to sit there with him, and I thought he acted wonderfully. He didn't show any rancour. He just held a line of focus on you. So I discussed with him, like, the guards weren't interested in this. I'll come to that in a moment in relation to Ken Garkin. Nobody was going to do anything about this. I could saw this was going to be brushed under the carpet. And my perfect belief and a lived life has shown me Ken was Ken Garkin's son. Ken Garkin, his father, was the brother of Benny Garkin, who was a famous Louth footballer, who was a very well-known solicitor in Dublin, who either was in practice or played football with Tony Hanna, who was one of the gods of the famous Dublin football team, an ex-guard and a solicitor. And once that was true, Ken Garkin's son was never going to be touched. Now, if you had been hanging around with a son of somebody from another side of town, many of them who you've met with me, from a less, let's say, well-off or well-set family, yeah, you would have faced the full rigours of the law. And you would have found yourself in a court and your reputation damaged. And I knew that was, once I heard Ken Garkin was involved, this is never going to go anywhere. So I contacted Ken Garkin's mother. And I discussed with her, I said, look, I think that both your son and my son have done something for which I think that they need to learn, take responsibility for, reflect on, and have some sort of, I won't call it punishment, but some sort of activity of repentance, which would help you reflect on what you've done and help you mend or change your ways or inform your future. And this woman had no interest. She didn't want to know anything. She just didn't want it. She didn't want to get, she didn't want to have any shared activity in relation to you at all. And I understand Ken Garkin's name was clean. And I believe you told me afterwards that her sense of punishment for him was telling him not to hang around with you. Now, the other thing is, I see in that case you've described that your mother's sense of how the repentance should be was to remove you from playing football with Dundalk. And I told you then, and I still hold the same view, I fundamentally disagreed with that view. I mean, rightly or wrongly, football was the only thing in your life at that time, as I understand it, that gave you a sense of self-value, confidence, a willingness to be a team player, to work hard at what you were doing, despite the fact that I absolutely believe that football is a really cruel game for young guys. You were an outsider because you hadn't been playing football as a kid, because Your mother had since described to me the fact that she didn't understand how important football was to a young man, especially someone like you. And I felt if there was any future for you, football, whatever it took you, it wasn't I ever expected you to become a Roy Keane or anything, but I believe that the attention and the commitment you showed to football would be a wonderful formative aspect of your character, which I think even over the years in Australia you've told me how it's been so important for you in terms of your contacts, etc. So given the fact that Ken Gorkin's mother showed no interest in any sort of collaborative action where we could help you together reflect and grow in this, I then approached Sean Lawless, who was involved with the Alzheimer's home in Dundalk. And Sean, a wonderful man. So we concocted this idea that you would do a number of Saturdays where you would go in where there weren't any of the clients in there, and that you would sweep up around the place and clean the outside and do some gardening work, etc. Now, no one else would be there. And remember, you were only with me every second Saturday, and I had no power in relation to your mother or anything, and your mother wasn't part of any solution around this. But thankfully, you seem to be at least in fear of me in the right way in which I believe a young man should be, and I was of my father. I had that, let's say, fearful respect. When I had no self-respect, at least I'd respect for my father out of fear. And I said, this is what's going to happen. And for maybe a period of 6 or 7 weeks, this was your penance, I suppose. And what used to happen on a Saturday you were with me, we would drive just up the road to the Alzheimer's home, and I would go in there and I would take my paperwork in there and I would do that inside for a couple of hours while you were doing your work outside. And on Saturdays when you were with your mother, I used to ring you in the morning until you get out of bed. Now, if you had the balls to say, fuck off, I'm not getting up, I had no legal power to do anything. And I'm just glad that you were in fear enough, or whatever decision you made, to commit to that. But what I want to say is that for a period of 6 or 8 weeks, you showed a wonderful commitment to doing, if I call it your time of coals or whatever Iron John's book discusses, about your time of ashes. You went through that time of ashes with a heart and a half. You never complained about it. I had huge respect for what you did. For you took your pain, and I asked you about Ken, and like you said, Ken never got to do it. But I talked to you sometime after, and you felt that whatever punishment you did or whatever you did, you felt better about you having to do this than Ken doing nothing, because he kept getting reminded about you, which I don't believe I reminded you about it after. You did your time, did the crime, did the time, you moved on. And at the end of it, and hopefully you'll remember, Sean then, of his own back and from his own pocket, bought you a Man United shirt, which at the time were maybe 60 quid or something like that, and gave it to you as a gift. And he would have presented you to the people in the Alzheimer's Summit as someone who'd done this on a voluntary basis. So a wonderful gesture of kindness, wisdom and mentorship to me and to you by Sean Lawless at the time. So there's a couple of things I just want to say, and you will get this in the digital print. There's a mind map here, Tig, and I'm not sure about the writing. Maybe you'll be able to reflect on whether it's your writing. I was big time into mind maps, but it's all about violent drinking thoughts, and it's a map about what it leads to, etc. And then there's an exercise or a written thing, violence caused by alcohol, written on the 3rd of November 2005. Again, I don't remember the specifics. Maybe you do when you see them. Maybe I asked you to go and research it, but this is stuff that you wrote, which you must have read up, and there's a couple of pages of this here. And I must have, I presume the only person involved must have been me, because there's lots of corrections. So you would use the word where instead of where, and I suppose these were spelling corrections, but both your writing is excellent and your capacity to describe what was going on is quite excellent as well. And then, yeah, I must have discussed with you at the time, Tig, about stuff, about being interested in things. So look, we had lots of struggles at the time, which culminated in you walking out sometime a couple of months later in February, a few months before your leaving cert. And you said to me later, look, my mum, doesn't make me do any study out here, so that's what I want to be. And, so I was in an impossible situation. In a sense, I think any parent would be in an impossible situation given those options. In fact, I'm just looking for another note that you had written there somewhere. And just look at, let's just see if I can find this here. And I suppose it ties into the same general idea I think it was, he had written it, and I'm just bringing, sorry, this hadn't been necessarily in my thoughts. Yeah, you said here, this is something that you wrote. Again, I said the date is 2002 here, so this is when you were 14 you wrote this. But it said, my dad makes me work too hard and my mum is easy on me. I want to live with my mum. Signed, Tig, 24th of the 9th, 02. So I know that this was a sort of an ongoing struggle, and I tie it into the idea of, you know, as you said, me being too hard on you, etc. But part of this was, I know you would have written it, you weren't. There's another thing you've written here, what I'm interested in. Another thing. Maybe I'd look at again, this is extempore and ad hoc. You wrote this in November 2005. So this is on the 6th of November 2005. So this is actually in the same time frame. What I'm interested in playing football because I'm interested in this. I will try to do my best at it. I will push myself to train for this life. Hopefully something good will come from the work which I will have to put in. With my football club, I'm not just into playing matches. I like to train, and the reason for that is because I like to be able to test myself. I have got on my school football team, and this gives me more of a reason to go to school. This football will help me with my town club because there are 2 players from my school team who are on my town club's team. This will help me to talk to players on my team. I'm also interested in playing and hanging around with my school friends and my home friends. School friends are another reason why I would like to stay at school. I think school is a great way to make friends, and this is probably the reason why there are so many people talking during class. My friends that I have outside of school don't really like football, but we still regard one another as very good friends. These friends would be better friends than my school friends. My friends at home would be the kind of friends which I would ask on holiday or ask to come on a camping trip or even as simple as going to the cinema. So I'm filling in the gaps here, Tig, but I'm assuming that during this idea of me asking you to reflect on what had happened, remember, you only would have come back to me. This all happened to you on a Friday night. Then on Saturday, you were talking to me. I went to see the guards on Saturday night. Probably I went to see the guy in the hotel on the Sunday. The conversation with Sean Lawless then took place a couple of days later. So when you come back to me on Monday during the week, we would have been talking about it. So I must have got you to write out something, a map here. And again, I'm not sure if it's your writing. I can't really say, but I think it might be. About interest, etc. So I think that what I must have been trying to do, you've written stuff here, for example, reading a book can help people in many different ways, but what if the book you are reading doesn't interest you at all? If you are reading in your own time, you are looking for something that will bring you into the book, whereas when reading in a school, you are reading to get a grade, and if the book you're reading you enjoy, this should make it much easier to read. Books that have no interest in lead to forgetting important facts on what you have just read. This also causes readers to drift into a daydream or even into a sleep. From reading books which do not interest you, you begin to ask yourself, what am I reading this for? What is it doing for me? This can change if reading books which you want to read, then you are trying to stay involved with what you are reading. Although reading these books may give you another view on a particular aspect, you may have different words or phrases used in these books. Learning these new words and phrases would also help your communication skills. These skills can help with meeting new people, can also help when talking to people about things that may interest you. These books may give you a new understanding of different reason and different ideas. From these books will get you another understanding of the meaning of different words. This was written on the 4th of the 11th. So this is all happening in the same time frame of that week. So the next couple of pages, I read these last night. I was sort of quite amazed by this. So what I'm going to do is, I think that the battery's about to run out, I think, on this. So I'm going to stop this video and take it up from there and then read this next section. I'll sew these 2 videos together. Okay?